I protected a blue-skinned girl during the war years ago. Now she's back, and she said, 'Kneel.'" Human the dropship groaned as it descended through the ash-filled atmosphere of Kepler 442b. "Sergeant." Marcus Kane gripped his rifle tighter, watching the gray wasteland spread beneath them. 3 years into the Coalition War, and humanity was losing badly. The mission was simple: evacuate the research station before the Vryn Empire glassed it from orbit. Marcus had done 17 extractions before this one. He expected this to be number 18. The station was a wreck when they arrived. Blast marks scarred the walls, and bodies littered the corridors. Marcus moved through the smoke with his squad, searching for survivors. They found her in a laboratory, huddled beneath a desk. She looked about 8 years old in human terms, though Marcus knew alien ages never translated properly. Her skin was deep blue, like ocean water under moonlight. Her large eyes reflected the emergency lights as she stared at the armed soldiers bursting through the door. "Civilian located," Marcus spoke into his comm. "Looks like a Vryn child." "Terminated," came the cold reply from command. "No witnesses, no loose ends." Marcus looked at the girl again. She clutched a broken datapad against her chest, trembling. Blood purple, not red-stained her torn clothing. Someone had already tried to kill her. "Negative," Marcus said. "Extracting civilian for intelligence purposes." His squad leader, Thompson, grabbed his arm. "Are you insane?" Command said, "I heard what Command said." Marcus shook him off and approached the child slowly, weapon lowered. She flinched but did not run. He offered his hand. She stared at it for a long moment before taking it. The extraction became complicated. The Vryn fleet arrived earlier than expected, and the dropship barely escaped the station before plasma lances reduced it to molten slag. During the flight back to the carrier, the girl sat beside Marcus in silence, still clutching her datapad. "Do you have a name?" Marcus asked. She looked at him with those impossibly large eyes. "Lyra. I'm Marcus." "You're safe now, Lyra." She said nothing, but her grip on his armored sleeve tightened slightly. The carrier was chaos. Wounded soldiers filled the medbay, and refugees from a dozen worlds crowded the hangar. Marcus pulled every favor he had to keep Lyra from being processed through military intelligence. He convinced the medical staff she was an orphan from one of the human colonies, explaining away her blue skin as a mutation from radiation exposure. For 3 months, Lyra stayed on the carrier. Marcus visited her whenever his duties allowed, bringing her food and old books from the ship's library. She learned human languages with disturbing speed, soaking up information like a sponge. She never talked about her family or why she had been alone in that station. One night, Marcus found her staring out a viewport at the stars. "Do you want to go home?" he asked. "I have no home," Lyra replied quietly. "The Empire killed my family because my father spoke against the war. They would have killed me too." "Then why were you at a human research station?" "My father smuggled me there before they came. He said humans were cruel and violent, but that some might show mercy." She looked up at Marcus. He was right. The war turned worse. Humanity's last defensive line collapsed, and the Coalition began evacuating entire sectors. The carrier received orders to fall back to Earth's defensive perimeter. During the retreat, they ran straight into a Vryn ambush. The battle lasted 6 hours. Marcus fought through burning corridors as the ship tore itself apart. He found Lyra in the refugee section, surrounded by panicked civilians. An explosion rocked the deck, and Marcus threw himself over her as shrapnel screamed overhead. When the ringing in his ears faded, Marcus realized he was bleeding badly. Lyra's hands pressed against his chest, her face twisted with fear. "You're hurt," she said. "I'll be fine. We need to get you to the escape pods." "Why?" Lyra's voice cracked. "Why do you keep protecting me?" "I'm your enemy." Marcus coughed, tasting blood. "You're not my enemy, kid. You're just a child who deserves a chance to live." They made it to the pods with minutes to spare. Marcus sealed Lyra inside with a group of civilians, ignoring her protests. As the pod launched, he watched her press her hands against the viewport. Screaming his name, the carrier exploded 3 minutes later. Marcus survived by chance, pulled from the wreckage by a rescue frigate. But by then, the civilian pods had scattered across 3 star systems. He never saw Lyra again. The war ended 2 years later with humanity's conditional surrender. The Vryn Empire absorbed human space into their territory, though they granted Earth and her colonies limited autonomy. Marcus retired from the military, carrying too many scars, both visible and hidden, to continue serving. He settled in a coastal town on Earth, far from the orbital defense platforms and military installations that reminded him of everything he had lost. The nightmares came regularly, filled with burning ships and the faces of soldiers he couldn't save. But most often, he dreamed of a blue-skinned girl, pressing her hands against a viewport, her mouth forming a name he could know. Longer here. 15 years passed. Marcus was working at the docks when the Vryn diplomatic cruiser arrived. Such visits were common now, as the Empire conducted regular inspections of human worlds to ensure compliance with the treaty. Marcus paid it little attention, focusing on repairing a fishing boat's engine. The soldiers came for him at sunset. They were Vryn honor guard, their armor gleaming in the fading light. They said nothing as they escorted Marcus through the town toward the landing pad where the diplomatic cruiser waited. Neighbors watched from windows, and Marcus felt a cold dread settle into his stomach. The cruiser's interior was opulent, all flowing curves and bioluminescent panels. The guards brought Marcus to a grand chamber where a figure stood at the far end, silhouetted against the viewport. She turned, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. Lyra had grown into a striking woman. Her blue skin still held that deep ocean quality, but now she wore the ornate robes of Vryn nobility. Golden circlets adorned her arms, and a diadem rested on her brow. She carried herself with absolute authority, every movement precise and measured, but her eyes were the same. "Hello, Marcus," Lyra said softly. "Lyra." His voice came out as barely a whisper. "You're alive." "I am. And I have risen far." She stepped closer, her robes whispering against the polished floor. "I am now Lyra Vel-Kyer, High Admiral of the Vryn Third Fleet and Royal Advisor to the Empress herself." Marcus struggled to process this. The frightened child he had saved was now one of the most powerful individuals in the Empire. "I have spent years searching for you," Lyra continued, "scouring records, following rumors, investigating every Marcus Kane in human space. And finally, I found you here, living quietly by the sea. Why?" Marcus asked. "Why search for me?" Lyra's expression remained unreadable. "Because I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved my life when you should have ended it. You protected me when your own people wanted me dead. You gave me hope when I had none." She moved closer until she stood directly before him. Then, slowly, she knelt. Marcus stared in shock as this powerful admiral, this royal advisor, lowered herself before him. "I once told you that you were my enemy," Lyra said. "I was wrong. You were my savior. And now I offer you everything I have become. Ask anything of me, Marcus Kane, and it shall be yours. Wealth, power, a position in the Empire, a world of your own. Name it, and I will make it so." Marcus looked down at her, this woman who commanded fleets and advised empresses, kneeling before a broken veteran living in a fishing village. His throat tightened. "Stand up," he said quietly. "Please, just stand up." Lyra rose gracefully, confusion flickering across her features. "I don't want wealth or power," Marcus continued. "I just wanted you to live, Lyra. to have the chance I saw in your eyes that day. If you've found that, if you've built something meaningful with your life, then the debt is already paid. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he had found her again, she smiled. It was small, tentative, but genuine. You remain the same man who offered his hand to a frightened child, she said. Humanity is fortunate to have produced even one like you. She gestured to her guards, who brought forward a data tablet. I cannot force gifts upon you, but I can offer protection. This document grants you and your family immunity from imperial law and places you under my personal protection. Should you ever need anything, you have only to call. Marcus accepted the tablet, not knowing what else to do. Lyra turned toward the viewport, looking out at the stars. The war scarred both our peoples. But perhaps, if enough individuals choose mercy over cruelty, we can build something better from the ruins. I'd like to believe that, Marcus said. Lyra looked back at him, and in her eyes he saw that frightened child still existed, buried beneath the admiral and the advisor. Then believe it, she said. Because I do. You taught me that hope can exist even in the darkest places. I will not forget that lesson. As Marcus left the cruiser, he looked back once. Lyra stood at the viewport, watching him go. She raised one hand in farewell. He returned the gesture. The diplomatic cruiser departed at dawn, rising into the sky like a silver star. Marcus watched it disappear, knowing he would likely never see Lyra again. But that was fine. She had survived. She had thrived, and sometimes that was enough.